wind howled across the frozen land, carrying sharp pieces of ice that cut like tiny blades against the skin. Snow stretched in every direction, endless and silent, like a white desert with no life. A lone human walked slowly through this cold wasteland, his boots sinking into the snow with every step. His breath rose in heavy clouds, vanishing into the night air. The man's face was tired, his body wrapped in an old coat that barely kept out the bitter chill. He had been traveling for hours, maybe days. It was hard to count time in a place where the sun and moon were hidden behind gray clouds. He kept his head down, focused only on moving forward, when suddenly a sound broke the silence. At first he thought it was the wind playing tricks on him. But then it came again, weak, desperate, and trembling. A voice, a cry, please! Human, the man froze. His heart skipped a beat. He turned his head, scanning the shadows. No one should be here. No living thing could survive this cold. Yet the voice was clear. It was not the wind. It was real. He tightened his grip on the small pack he carried. Danger lived in places like this. Traps, raiders, hungry creatures. Still, something in that voice sounded too fragile, too broken to be a trick. Against his better judgment, he followed the sound. Snow crunched loudly beneath his boots as he moved forward. The cry grew clearer, pulling him deeper into the icy gloom. His pulse quickened. He felt watched, though he could see nothing beyond the swirling snow. Then out of the storm, a small figure stumbled toward him. It was a girl, not human. Her skin glowed faintly blue in the moonlight, cracked with frost and dirt. Her eyes, large and shining like glass, were wet with tears. She wore ragged clothing, torn and far too thin for such deadly weather. She looked like she had been running for hours, maybe days, with no food and no warmth. She could not have been older than 12 by human measure. The man stopped in shock. His breath caught. He had seen aliens before, yes, but never like this, never a child alone in the wild. The girl fell to her knees in the snow, her tiny hands clutching the icy ground. Her voice shook with pain and fear. Please, human. My mom is dying from the cold. The man's chest tightened. He had heard many cries in his life, but this one pierced deeper than any blade. He knelt down slowly, cautious, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of a trap. Still his heart would not let him turn away. Where is she? He asked, his voice rough from the cold. The girl's lips trembled as she pointed with a shaking hand. In the ruins, not far. Please come. Her tears froze on her cheeks as she struggled to stand. The man hesitated for a long moment. He knew nothing about this child. For all he knew, men with knives could be waiting in the shadows, ready to spring on a fool who followed. And yet, when he looked into her desperate eyes, he saw only truth. The raw fear of losing someone she loved. The kind of fear no one could fake. Finally, he nodded. Show me. The girl's face lit with the faintest spark of hope. She turned quickly, almost stumbling as she began to run. The man followed close behind, his boots heavy in the snow. His every sense was alert, nerves tight as bowstrings. He could hear nothing but the wind and the crunch of their footsteps. The ruins came into view, dark shapes buried under ice and stone. The place looked dead, like the bones of a forgotten world. The girl led him down a broken passage half covered with snow. Inside, the air was still freezing, but at least the wind did not bite so hard. In the corner of the ruins, lying on the cold stone floor, was her mother. The man stopped, his eyes narrowing. The alien woman's skin was pale, her breath shallow, her body shivering violently. She was wrapped in thin cloth, hardly enough to keep away death. Frost had already formed on her lips. The girl dropped beside her, grabbing her mother's hand. Please, she begged, her voice breaking. Save her. Don't let her die. The man's heart pounded. He had survived battles, storms, and long, lonely nights. But standing there, staring at a dying alien mother and her desperate child, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. The weight of choice. If he walked away now, they would die. That much was certain. If he stayed, danger would come. For the cold was not the only enemy in this place still. As the little girl's tear-filled eyes locked onto his, he knew one thing. He could not walk away. The ruins groaned softly in the wind, as if the stones themselves were remembering the lives that once lived here. The man's boots scraped against the icy floor as he stepped closer. His breath came in heavy clouds hanging in the still air. He could hear the faint rasp of the alien woman's breathing, each one weak and shallow like a flame about to vanish. The girl knelt beside her mother, holding her thin hand tightly. She's so cold, she whispered, tears streaking down her frostbitten cheeks. Her small shoulders shook as if she might break apart at any moment. The man dropped to one knee. He touched the woman's arm and felt the truth of it. Her skin was like ice. She had little time left. He pulled his pack from his shoulders and opened it quickly. Inside were only a few supplies. A small heating unit, some fire gels, a thin blanket. Not nearly enough for long, but maybe enough for now. He placed the unit on the ground, pressed a button, and a dim red glow came to life. The heat spread slowly, warming the frozen air around them. He laid the blanket across the woman's body, then pressed his own coat closer around her shoulders. Still, her lips trembled blue and her breath stayed shallow. The girl's wide eyes searched his face. Is she going to die? The man paused. He had seen death many times. He knew the signs, knew how quickly life could slip away in the cold. But as he looked into the child's desperate eyes, he could not speak the truth. He forced his voice to be steady. Not if I can help it. The girl nodded quickly, clinging to those words as if they were a lifeline. She shifted closer to her mother, warming her with her own tiny body. The man worked with calm precision, though his mind raced. He rubbed the woman's hands and arms, trying to force warmth into her veins. He fed the heating unit more gel, making its glow brighter. He even took off one of his own gloves, pressing his bare hand against hers, ignoring the sting of the cold. Minutes passed like hours. The sound of her breathing filled the room, each inhale a battle, each exhale a question. Would there be another? The man leaned close, checking her pulse, faint, weak. But there. At last her chest rose in a deeper breath. Her lips parted slightly, letting out a long sigh. Her eyelids fluttered, and for a brief moment she opened her eyes. They were the same glassy, glowing blue as her daughter's, though dim with weakness. The girl gasped with joy. Mom, you're awake. The woman's lips trembled, and a hoarse whisper escaped. Who? Her eyes moved to the man. Confusion. Fear. The girl squeezed her hand. It's a human. He helped us. The mother tried to speak again, but coughed instead, her body shaking. The man lifted her gently, careful not to strain her frail form, and propped her against a piece of broken stone. Don't speak, he said softly. Save your strength. The girl looked up at him, her voice small but fierce. Thank you. Thank you for not leaving us. The man didn't answer. He only gave a short nod and looked toward the dark cracks in the ruins. His instincts told him they were not safe here. The heat and light might save the woman's life, but they would also attract attention. In lands like this, warmth was like a beacon, and beacons always drew hungry eyes. The girl followed his gaze, her own fear returning. They'll come back, won't they? The man's head turned sharply. Who? She swallowed hard, her breath shaking. The ones who chased us. The ones who burned our home. Her voice broke, and she buried her face against her mother's shoulder. They'll find us again. The man's jaw tightened. He had suspected as much. This was not just about cold. This was about survival against enemies, too. He reached for the small weapon strapped at his side, checking its charge. Still working, though weak. Enough for a fight if it came to that. The woman's trembling hand reached out, brushing against his arm. Her voice was weak but filled with something more than fear. Save her. He met her eyes, and for a brief moment, he saw her strength beneath the weakness. A mother's desperate will to protect her child. The man nodded once, slow and firm. I'll keep her safe. The girl looked up at him again, tears frozen on her cheeks, hope flickering in her eyes. In that moment, he knew his path had changed. He had started this night as a wanderer, alone in the snow, caring only for his own survival. But now, standing here with a dying mother and a frightened child, he felt the weight of a promise he had not spoken aloud. They were his to protect. The ruins groaned again in the wind. The heat from the unit spread wider, and the woman's breathing grew steadier. But the man's ears caught something else. Faint footsteps in the snow outside, soft but deliberate. His hand closed around his weapon. The girl stiffened. They found us. The man stood slowly, his shadow stretching across the ruined walls, eyes sharp and unblinking. The night was far from over. The ruins fell silent again, but the man's ears stayed sharp. He knew what he had heard. Footsteps, soft but steady, moving through the snow outside. His hand gripped the weapon tighter. He raised one finger to his lips, signaling the girl to stay quiet. Her wide eyes filled with fear, but she nodded and pressed closer to her mother. The man crouched low, moving like a shadow through the broken stone, His breath slowed, his eyes narrowing as he studied the cracks in the wall. Beyond the ruined doorway, faint shapes shifted in the snow, at least 3, maybe more. They were careful, moving slow, their bodies blending into the night. These were no hunters searching for food, they were trackers, predators. The girl whispered shakily, "It's them." "The ones who chased us," the man didn't answer. His silence was its own reply. He pressed his back against the wall and listened. The crunch of boots in snow grew closer. A low, guttural voice spoke in a language he didn't know, but the tone was clear, commanding, cruel. Another voice laughed, sharp and cold, the kind of laugh that followed pain. The girl's small hand clutched his sleeve. "They'll kill us," she whispered, barely audible. He looked down at her, and though his face stayed hard, his voice was steady. "Not tonight." He pointed toward a narrow crack in the wall, a tunnel barely wide enough for the child. "Take your mother and hide there, stay low. Don't come out until I say." Her eyes filled with tears. "What about you?" "I'll be here," he said. "Go." She hesitated, torn between fear and trust. But when her mother weakly tugged her arm, she obeyed. The girl helped the frail woman toward the crack, guiding her gently until they both slipped inside the shadows. The man waited until their soft movements faded into silence, then turned back to the entrance. The footsteps stopped. For a moment there was only the sound of the wind. Then a figure stepped into view. Tall, broad. Its skin was dark and scaly, its eyes glowing faintly yellow. A curved blade hung at its side and its breath smoked in the cold. Behind it, 2 more shadows emerged, carrying crude weapons that gleamed in the moonlight. The man's chest tightened. 3 enemies, maybe more outside. He could not fight them all directly, not with one weak weapon and little cover. But he didn't need to fight all of them. He only needed to stall, to confuse, to make them believe there was nothing worth finding here. He crouched lower, waiting as they entered the ruins. Their boots scraped against stone, their voices low and mocking. One kicked at the heating unit, snarling when the warm glow brushed against his hand. "They were here," the guttural leader growled. "Find them." The man's grip tightened. His instinct screamed at him to attack first, to strike before they reached the crack where the girl and her mother hid. But striking too soon would give him away. He needed the perfect moment. The invaders split apart, moving through the ruins like wolves sniffing for prey. One of them came close, his shadow stretching across the broken floor. The man pressed himself flat against the wall, waiting until the alien's back turned. Then in a swift motion he struck. His weapon hummed as it fired, a sharp flash of light slicing the air. The alien staggered, letting out a guttural roar before collapsing onto the stone. The sound echoed through the ruins like thunder. The others spun around instantly, weapons raised, their eyes locking onto the shadows. The man darted back into cover, his heart hammering. He could hear their growls, their curses. Human. One spat, rage burning in his voice. "Come out and die." The man stayed silent. He moved through the ruins quickly, every step careful, every breath measured. He knew he could not defeat them all in open combat. He had to use the ruins themselves, broken walls, sharp stones, narrow passages, to turn the fight into a game of shadows. Another alien crept forward, blade raised. The man waited until he passed beneath a hanging slab of ice, then slammed his boot into the wall. The slab cracked loose, crashing down with a roar. The alien was buried under the weight, his cry cut short. The leader snarled, his voice shaking with fury. "You think you can hide, human? We'll find the girl. We'll find the woman. And when we do..." The man stepped from the shadows, weapon raised, eyes burning like fire. "You'll find me first," the leader roared, rushing forward with his curved blade. The man dodged, the blade sparking against stone. He fired, the shot grazing the alien's shoulder. The leader stumbled but did not fall, his eyes glowing brighter with hate. The clash filled the ruins, echoing like a storm. Stone cracked, snow fell from the ceiling, and the shadows danced as human and alien battled in the frozen dark. And in the narrow crack of the wall, the girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, tears in her eyes whispering over and over, "Please, don't let him die. Please don't let him die." The fight was far from over. The leader's blade slashed through the frozen air, each strike fast and heavy. The man dodged, his body moving with practiced precision. Sparks burst from stone as the blade scraped against the walls, filling the ruins with sharp echoes. His breath came hard, but his eyes stayed focused, calm in the chaos. He had fought before, too many times. His scars carried stories no one had ever heard. The alien leader roared, his yellow eyes glowing with rage. "You cannot win, human. You are weak in this cold." He swung again, the blade cutting so close it tore through the man's sleeve. The sting of the icy wind burned his exposed skin, but he did not flinch. Instead, he stepped in close, faster than the alien expected, and slammed his elbow into the creature's chest. The alien staggered back, coughing. The man raised his weapon and fired. The blast struck true, searing across the alien's arm. The leader howled in pain, clutching the wound, his voice echoing through the ruins like thunder. The sound carried far into the night. Too far. The man's eyes narrowed. That cry would bring more. From the shadows of the crack, the girl gasped softly. She clutched her mother tighter, watching as the human moved with a skill she had never seen. His every motion was sharp, trained, like someone who had survived countless battles. He was not just a wanderer, he was something more. The alien leader spat blood, his grin twisted with hatred. "I know you now. You are not just some lost traveler. You are one of them. The soldiers. The killers who burned our worlds." The man froze for a heartbeat. Memories flashed in his mind. Fire, smoke, screams, orders shouted through static-filled comms. He shoved them down, locking them away. His voice was low, rough. "That was a long time ago," the alien sneered. "But the blood still stains your hands." He lunged again, blade raised high. The man blocked with his weapon, metal crashing against metal. The impact shook through his bones, but he stood firm. He twisted, forced the alien off balance, and struck with brutal speed. The leader fell hard onto the stone floor, the blade clattering away. The man stood over him, weapon aimed between his glowing eyes. The ruins fell silent. Only the sound of the wind outside remained. The alien's breath came in sharp rasps, his voice dripping with venom. "Kill me, soldier. It is all you know how to do." The man's finger tightened on the trigger, but then stopped. His eyes flicked toward the crack in the wall where the girl's wide eyes watched him. She was trembling, her small hands gripping her mother as if clinging to life itself. Her gaze held fear, but also something else. Hope. He lowered the weapon. The alien leader's eyes widened with disbelief. "Mercy?" he spat. "From a human?" The man's voice was cold but steady. "Not for you. For her." He stepped back, weapon still ready. "Leave. Tell your pack if they come again, they won't walk away." The leader snarled, rage flashing in his glowing eyes. But he was wounded, beaten. He gathered himself and stumbled to his feet, glaring at the human with a promise of vengeance. Without another word, he vanished into the night, leaving only silence behind. The man exhaled slowly, the weight of old ghosts pressing heavy on his chest. He turned back to the crack. The girl crawled out, still trembling, her eyes wide with wonder and confusion. You fought like a soldier," she whispered. "You knew how to move, how to kill." The man didn't meet her eyes. He knelt down, picking up his pack, his voice low. "I was a soldier once." The girl blinked. "Then why are you here alone?" He paused, the question striking deeper than he expected. Why was he here, wandering frozen wastelands, carrying nothing but memories and scars? He had left the war long ago, but the war had never truly left him. His eyes softened as he looked at her. "Because I have nothing left." The girl's heart ached at his words. She looked back at her mother, still weak but breathing steadier now under the faint glow of the heater. The child's voice was quiet, almost fragile. "Then maybe now you do." The man stared at her, caught off guard. He had not expected those words, not from someone so young, so broken by loss. For the first time in years, something stirred in him, a feeling he had buried deep under ashes and frost. Hope. He shook it off quickly, rising to his feet. "We can't stay here. The others will come. We need to move before dawn." The girl nodded, determination hardening her young face. She slipped under her mother's arm, helping her stand with trembling strength. The man adjusted the pack on his shoulder, scanning the ruins one last time. The shadows felt heavier now, the night colder. He knew more enemies were out there waiting, but he also knew something had changed. He was no longer just a wanderer drifting through the snow. He was something he thought he had lost forever, a protector. And as the three of them stepped into the icy darkness, the secret of his past walked with him, heavy and unspoken, shaping every step into the unknown. The night was long, and the snow did not stop. The three of them moved slowly through the frozen ruins, their breaths rising in clouds, their steps heavy with exhaustion. The girl clung tightly to her mother, guiding her step by step. The woman was weak, her body trembling, but she refused to collapse. The man walked beside them, his weapon always ready, his eyes scanning every shadow. The wind howled like a beast, pushing against them with invisible claws. Ice cracked beneath their feet, and the ruins stretched endlessly around them like a graveyard of stone. But for the first time, the girl did not feel completely alone. Every time she stumbled, the human's hand was there to steady her. Every time the wind roared too loud, she looked up and saw his steady face, calm and sharp, and it gave her courage. After hours of slow movement, they found a half-buried chamber, the remains of a collapsed building. The man tested the walls, making sure they would hold. It was not safe, but it was shelter. He helped them inside, set down his pack, and lit another small heating unit. The red glow filled the chamber, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. The woman lowered herself onto a flat stone, breathing hard. Her eyes were still dim, but there was a trace of color in her cheeks now. The girl sat close, wrapping her arms around her mother. The man sat apart, leaning against the wall with his weapon across his knees. His eyes stayed sharp, but his body was tired. He had not rested in days. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the warmth soak into his frozen bones. The girl studied him in silence. He was different from any human she had ever imagined. Strong, yes, but also silent, heavy with secrets. His movements were sharp, but his eyes carried a sadness she could not understand. Finally, she spoke in a small voice. "You saved us." The man opened his eyes. His gaze shifted to her, steady and unreadable. "I only did what was needed." She shook her head. "No one else would have stopped. No one else would have helped." Her voice trembled. "You could have left us to die." His jaw tightened. He looked away, staring at the glow of the heater. His voice was low, almost bitter. "I have left too many before. Not this time." The girl tilted her head, curious. "You were a soldier, weren't you?" The man said nothing for a long time. The silence was heavy, filled with memories he could not speak aloud. Finally, he gave a small nod. "I was," he admitted. "Long ago. Before the war ended. Before I lost everything." The girl's eyes softened. She could feel the weight in his words, the shadow of ghosts that still followed him. She reached out slowly, her small fingers brushing against his rough hand. "But you didn't lose everything. You still saved us." The man looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time since the war he felt something stir in his chest, a fragile thread connecting him to someone else. The woman, weak but listening, opened her eyes and whispered, "You are not like the others. You still carry honor." Her voice was faint but firm. The man bowed his head slightly. He did not feel honor. He only felt the weight of choices, some made long ago, some made tonight. The girl leaned closer to him, her voice almost a whisper. "Stay with us, please, we need you." Her words cut through the silence like a blade. He had sworn never to belong to anyone again, never to tie himself to another soul. But now, staring at the child and her fragile mother, he felt his walls begin to crack. "I will," he said at last. The words surprised even him, but once spoken they felt like truth. "I'll keep you safe." The girl smiled for the first time since he had met her. A small, fragile smile, but real. The firelight flickered across their faces, softening the cold edges of the night. For a brief moment, the chamber felt almost warm, almost safe. The man allowed himself to close his eyes again, just for a moment, his weapon still across his knees. But the silence did not last. Outside, the wind shifted. The man's ears caught it instantly. The faint howl of something not natural carried through the snow. A hunting call. His eyes snapped open, his body tense again. The girl noticed his sudden movement. "What is it?" He listened carefully. The sound grew louder. It was not the same enemies as before. This was different, wilder, more dangerous. He stood slowly, checking his weapon, his voice sharp and steady. "We're not safe here. Not yet." The fragile warmth of their bond was real, but so was the danger waiting in the dark. The night was not finished with them, and as the howl echoed again through the frozen ruins, the man knew their fight for survival was only beginning. The howl rose again, sharper this time, rolling across the ruins like thunder. The man's grip tightened around his weapon. His eyes scanned the cracks in the walls, the frozen corridors beyond. He had heard many sounds in war, battle cries, death screams, beasts in the night. But this howl was different. It was hungry, patient. The girl clutched her mother's arm, trembling. "What is that?" she whispered. The man didn't answer. Instead, he crouched near the doorway, every sense sharp, every muscle tight. The faint glow of the heater behind them threw long shadows across the floor. The girl's small hand reached for his sleeve. "Please, don't let them take us." His voice was low and firm. "I won't." The sound came closer. Footsteps now, not one but many. Heavy, crunching the snow. The ruins themselves seemed to hold their breath. The man rose to his full height, weapon ready. His heart beat steady, his mind already shaping the battlefield in his head. The first figure appeared at the entrance. Its body was broad, covered in thick fur, its jaws lined with sharp teeth. Its glowing eyes swept the chamber, locking onto the man. Behind it, more shapes moved in the shadows, 5, 6, maybe more. The air filled with the scent of frost and blood. The girl gasped, pulling her mother closer. "It's them, the hunters." The beast stepped inside, low growls rumbling in their throats. The man raised his weapon, fired once. A bright flash lit the chamber, striking the nearest beast square in the chest. It howled in pain, collapsing to the floor. The others snarled and spread out, circling. "Stay behind me," the man barked, his voice sharp like steel. The beasts lunged. The man moved with precision, firing quick bursts, each shot cutting through the air with deadly aim. 2 more fell, their bodies crashing against the stone. But there were too many. They came fast, claws scraping, teeth snapping, shadows leaping from every corner. He fought like a storm, his body moving faster than thought. He struck with his weapon, with his fists, with his boots. Each move was sharp, brutal, born from years of battle. The ruins shook with the clash. Growls, gunfire, the sharp crack of stone under impact. But even as he fought, he knew he could not hold them forever. For every beast that fell, another pushed forward. His weapon hummed low, its charge weakening. Soon it would die. And then so would they. One beast leapt high, its claws slashing across his arm. Pain burned hot, but he did not fall. He twisted, drove his elbow into its throat and finished it with a blast to the skull. Another charged from behind. He spun too slow, but the girl screamed a warning. He dropped low, avoiding its jaws by inches, and struck upward, sending it crashing into the wall. The girl clung to her mother, eyes wide with terror. She had never seen anyone fight like this. Not even her own people's warriors had moved with such speed, such fury. The man fought like someone who had nothing left to lose. Still his breath grew heavier, his body slowing. Sweat froze against his skin. Blood dripped into the snow. He staggered just for a moment, and one of the beasts slammed into him, knocking his weapon away. It skittered across the floor too far to reach. The beast loomed above him, jaws wide, ready to tear his throat out. The girl screamed, and then the man's eyes changed. The sadness, the weight, the silence that had lived inside him cracked open. What filled it was fire. He roared, not with fear, but with rage. His hands shot up, grabbing the beast's jaws, forcing them apart with raw strength. Muscles strained, bones creaked, and with a furious cry, he snapped its neck. He rose, blood on his face, his eyes burning like steel. He picked up his weapon again, the hum faint but alive. The remaining beasts hesitated, their growls low and uncertain. They saw not just a man before them, but something else, something relentless, unstoppable. The man pointed his weapon at them, his voice cold and fierce. "Come then. Let's finish this." The beasts lunged together. The chamber became chaos once more. Gunfire flashing, claws tearing, the ground shaking under the battle. The girl buried her face against her mother, unable to watch but unable to look away. When the last echo faded, the ruins were silent again. The floor was littered with broken bodies. The air reeked of blood and smoke. The man stood in the center, his chest heaving, his weapon finally dead in his hand. His coat was torn, his arm bleeding, but he was alive. Slowly, he turned back to them. His eyes softened when he saw the girl and her mother still huddled together, still alive. "It's over," he said, his voice rough but steady. The girl rushed to him, her small hands clutching his arm. "You saved us again," she whispered. The man looked at her, then at the woman who was weak but smiling faintly, her eyes shining with gratitude. He felt something shift inside him again, a bond, fragile but real, stronger now than before. But deep down he knew this was not the end. Enemies still roamed the frozen world. More would come. The fight for survival was far from finished. And as the first pale light of dawn broke through the clouds, he knew one truth with certainty. This night had changed everything. The first rays of dawn spilled across the frozen wasteland, thin and pale, but real. After the long night of screams, shadows, and blood, the light felt almost holy. The ruins lay silent now, broken walls painted with the marks of battle. The bodies of the beasts lay scattered across the icy floor, their growls silenced forever. The man stood at the center, shoulders heavy, breath steady but ragged. His weapon hung useless in his hand, drained of power. His coat was torn, blood stained his arm, and his face was marked with exhaustion. Yet he still stood tall, like a wall that had refused to break no matter how hard the storm had struck. The girl rose slowly from where she had shielded her mother. Her small legs shook, but her eyes were bright. She hurried toward the man, her hands reaching for him. "You did it. You beat them all." He looked down at her, his hard face softening just slightly. He knelt so she could reach him, letting her small hands touch his wounded arm. She frowned, worry in her eyes. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said quietly. "I've had worse." Behind them, the alien woman stirred. Her breathing was stronger now, steadier. The faint glow of dawn painted her face, and for the first time there was color in her cheeks again. She struggled to sit up, leaning against the broken wall. Her eyes, weak but warm, found the human. "You saved us," she whispered. The man lowered his gaze. He had heard those words before in other places from other voices now long gone. But this time something was different. This time it was not a soldier thanking him, not a commander, not a fellow fighter. It was a mother, a daughter. Innocent lives that would not have survived without him. The girl held his hand tightly, her voice trembling but filled with light. "You didn't leave us." "You stayed." He stared at her, his heart heavy with memories of the many times he hadn't stayed, the many he couldn't save. Yet here she was, alive, smiling at him as if he was the only reason she still breathed. A fragile warmth stirred inside him, stronger than the fire of any heater, brighter than the dawn itself. Still, he knew the danger wasn't gone. He rose slowly, scanning the horizon through the cracks of the ruins. The snow still stretched endless, the silence hiding unknown threats. More hunters would come, more enemies. The frozen world was merciless, and he had no illusions about how long peace would last. "We can't stay here," he said firmly. "They'll search for us again. We need to move." The girl nodded quickly, her young face already hardened by fear and survival. She helped her mother to her feet, though her small arms trembled under the weight. The man stepped forward and lifted the woman with ease, carrying her carefully in his arms. Her head rested against his chest, her breath soft but alive. The three of them stepped out of the ruins into the cold embrace of the morning. Snowflakes drifted gently through the air, glowing faintly in the weak sunlight. For the first time since the night began, the world looked less like a graveyard and more like a promise. They walked in silence, the crunch of their steps the only sound. The girl looked up at the man often, her eyes filled with both wonder and questions. She wanted to ask him everything, where he came from, why he fought, what secrets he carried, but something inside told her he was not ready. After a long stretch of silence, she finally whispered, "You said you have nothing left, but now you have us." The words struck deeper than any blade. The man's jaw tightened, but he did not look away. His past had been filled with fire, with orders, with death. He had lived as a soldier, survived as a wanderer, and carried himself as a ghost. But now, walking beside a child who looked at him as if he was hope itself, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Belonging. He adjusted his grip on the woman in his arms and glanced down at the girl. "Then I'll protect you. Both of you, for as long as I can." The girl's face lit with a fragile smile, her eyes shining brighter than the dawn. She walked closer to him, her small hand brushing against his coat as if making sure he would not vanish like a dream. The sun rose higher, painting the frozen world with light. The ruins behind them grew smaller, fading into the distance. Ahead, the horizon stretched wide and endless, full of both danger and possibility. The man did not know what waited for them. More enemies, more battles, perhaps even a place where they could be safe, though he doubted such a place existed. Still, for the first time in years, he wanted to keep moving forward, not for himself, but for them. The girl's voice was soft, but it carried in the wind. "You are more than human. You are hope." The man's steps slowed for a moment, the words echoing inside him. He did not answer, but the faintest flicker of a smile touched his lips. And so, with dawn at their backs and the endless unknown ahead, the soldier who once believed he had nothing left walked on, not as a ghost of war, but as a protector, carrying the fragile warmth of a new beginning.